Hey people, it is Thursday, January the 11th. The time is 4:05 in the afternoon. It's currently 2 degrees Celsius and very overcast and drizzly. It was snowing earlier in the day, but that has since turned to drizzle. I'm on the corner of George Street and Adelaide Street East, looking west towards the financial district. But I thought I'd do something I don't think I've actually done on the channel before. I'm going to walk around the boundaries of the original town site of the town of York, which is the town that originally grew up in this area before it was renamed the city of Toronto. So the town of York was founded in 1793, and it grew throughout the early 19th century, and then in 1834 it was renamed the city of Toronto. But the original town site of York comprised of about 10 square blocks bounded by George Street, Front Street, Adelaide Street, and Berkeley Street. So I'm going to take a walk around those boundaries here of the original town of York. And we'll just see what it would have been like to walk around the entire town over 200 years ago in the late 18th century. And on the way, we'll pass by some historic buildings from the mid-19th century that are still standing. The first of which is right here on the corner of Adelaide and George, and that's the old Toronto Post Office, the original post office of Toronto. Of course, many of these buildings came along after the town of York became the city of Toronto, but they're still among the oldest buildings in the city. Unfortunately, most of the houses and buildings from the original town of York no longer exist. So we're going to start by walking east here along Adelaide. And I was just looking up some info online about the old town site of York, and I found this little tidbit here that says in 1793 the little frontier town of York consisted of just 10 blocks, 2 rows of 5 stacked on top of each other between present-day George, Front, Adelaide, and Berkeley streets. The entire city of Toronto grew from this tiny waterfront nucleus. And that's the route we're going to be taking within those blocks. But here's the old first post office of Toronto. So this came along after the town of York became the city of Toronto, as I mentioned. But still a very handsome old historic building, one of the oldest in the city. I think most of the buildings from the original town of York were quite ramshackle in nature. As it said in that little blurb I read, it was just a frontier town really in those days. And most of those buildings were probably replaced by more sturdy structures, and many of them were probably also lost to fire and things of that nature. There's a look south down Frederick Street. We're passing by George Brown College, the main downtown campus. So Adelaide Street now is a major one-way thoroughfare that mainly just gets traffic across downtown and an expedient manner. And eventually in this direction, it will direct you onto the Don Valley Parkway. So I'm going to keep an eye out for other notable historic buildings as I continue on, and I see one across the street. Many of them do have plaques. So this is at Sherborne here. Now, as time went on, the old town of York did grow quite a bit up until 1834. It grew quite a bit further to the west as far as Peter Street on the west side of present-day downtown. And this building dates from 1842. Good timing on my part. All right, just letting me go. And I think by the time the old town of York became the city of Toronto in 1834, it had over 9,000 people. And then once it became the city of Toronto, the population growth really started ramping up. And by the end of the 19th century, Toronto was well on its way to being a major city. If the people from the old town of York could be plunked down into present day on these very streets, I wonder what their reaction would be. A huge new construction site. Many new towers are rising all around the east side here. And I didn't even mention that this neighborhood is called Old Town for obvious reasons. I think the main street of Old Town is King Street East, which we'll be walking along soon. And there are many more historic buildings along King Street than there are along Adelaide here. And coming out to Berkeley, so this is as far east as we'll go. This is the eastern boundary of the old town site of York. As I mentioned, these were the original blocks laid out. And it continually grew after that, of course. The Alumni Theater Company, very nice, established in 1918. Some nice old row houses here. I wonder what year they date back to. No doubt sometime in the 19th century. Probably more late 19th century though, not not back in the days of York, of course. And the light drizzle has stopped. Thankfully, I didn't bring my umbrella or anything. And here's King Street. Just start walking here on the north side. I'll probably switch to the south side a bit further down. The 504 King. I wonder what year the very first streetcar service began on King Street here. I could probably Google that. George Brown College buildings. This is Old Town here. Let's cross here. This is at Princess Street. Lots of the street names in the area have changed since they're originally laid out, but some are still the same, such as King Street and Front Street. And Front Street is down there. We'll be walking along there after King. These buildings are all vacant. There must be a redevelopment proposed for the site, although I don't see the sign. Oh, there it is. It's on the corner by Tokyo Smoke. So it looks like this whole row of old buildings is set to be part of a redevelopment here. If these are heritage buildings, at least some of them are. I don't think all of them are, but a couple of them will probably be preserved as that redevelopment progresses. I think another tall residential building will be going on that site. This area has sort of resisted tall towers all the way up into the present day, and well, it's only now when they're starting to make their way into the east side of downtown, especially in Old Town. And crossing Sherbourne again. That's a nice building on the corner there. You can see how some of the old buildings have already been incorporated into developments. On this side too. I see a plaque here. Grocery store, 1879. William Ferguson, proprietor. So, not exactly grand by any means, but it's been around a long time. I think the grandest building in Old Town is up ahead, and that is St. Lawrence Hall, dating from around 1849 or thereabouts. Another plaque commemorating the Underground Railroad restaurant. You can always pause and read if you like. And here's Frederick Street again. We'll get another look from this direction. Just sort of keeping an eye out for plaques and things of that nature. We're almost at George Street again. So St. Lawrence Hall actually lies a bit beyond the boundaries of the original town site of York, bit further west here at Jarvis and King. So I won't get to that in this walk, but I have shown St. Lawrence Hall in many other videos, just recently actually. Nice old building across the way there for lease right now. All right, so I'm going to start heading south on George, make our way down to Front. So in the St. Lawrence Market neighborhood now. St. Lawrence Market and Old Town sort of go together a lot. In my mind, they're both two of the oldest neighborhoods in downtown Toronto, and they are sort of blended together in many ways. There's a look to the west towards the financial district. St. Lawrence Market is up ahead. And now heading east along Front Street. So at one time, this was the southernmost street in the city. This was built right up along what was the shoreline of Lake Ontario at that time. And over time, they've filled in a lot of land south of Front Street. So now you can go quite a ways to the south before you hit the lake shore. But this was the southern boundary of the town of York, because there was no place else you could go below this. Back at Frederick Street again. Looks like they're putting in some lights at this intersection here. I see a plaque across the street. Imposing looking building here. (165) Front Street, 1889. So this is well after the city of Toronto was established and in a major growth phase. The St. Lawrence branch of the Toronto Public Library. The new tower is rising on that corner of Sherbourne here. think that'll be one of the tallest buildings in the neighborhood, actually. I think it'll be 39 stories. Lower Sherbourne, looking south. So you can see how much further south things go now with all the land that was filled in south of Front Street. It's quite a ways. I think there's a plaque in St. Lawrence Market neighborhood just to the west on one of the buildings showing where the shoreline used to be. Well, not really a plaque, but more like a commemorative, the shoreline commemorative it's called. Here's a rendering of the new building that's going up here. And crossing Princess again. See some old buildings across the street. I think I'll cross. Might be some plaques to check out. I always thought this was quite the bizarre complex here. Sort of a mix of what's supposed to look old and historic with a modern thing stuck on top with a supermarket on the bottom. I think that whole complex is slated to be redeveloped also. Right, so here are these old historic looking buildings, and sure enough, this one dates from 1885. Canadian Opera Company building. originally the Standard Woolens Mills building. I almost said mittens. Woolen mittens just comes to mind. 1882. This is my favorite. And the Consumers Gas Company Purifying House, 1888. Yeah, this is the best one. Too bad the windows were all bricked over there, though. But still very impressive. And we're back at Berkeley Street, the eastern boundary of the old town of York. Original town site, at least. Here's the head office of the Globe and Mail newspaper, Canada's national newspaper. One of 4 daily newspapers in Toronto, which is surprising that the city still has 4 daily newspapers, major daily newspapers. A lot of major cities can barely keep 1 daily paper going these days. Just to the east is the Distillery District, another very old part of the city. And Corktown. And lots of construction for the new Ontario line. New subway line will be running through the area. I thought there might be a plaque on this one. Reed Lumber Company, 1891. Let's cross. I'll walk back up Berkeley Street to Adelaide on the other side of Berkeley this time. And Parliament Street is the next major street to the east. And beyond there is where Corktown begins. And much of Corktown resembles Old Town. It's almost as old. Sort of like the St. Lawrence neighborhood on the west side, or to the south of Old Town. Let's just go. Yeah, you can see that whole building now. It's quite nice. You can see how they incorporated it into the whole development here on the corner, though. Looks like it was preserved in its entirety, though, that building, not just the facades. And here are those old townhouses again. I don't think there's any indication as to what year they were built, though. I don't see any plaques or anything. It's mostly commercial buildings that have those plaques, not so much the old residential buildings, unless someone notable lived there. We're back at Adelaide. So I'm going to start to wrap up the walk around the original town site of the old town of York, which preceded the city of Toronto, dating from 1793 till about 1834. The original 10 blocks of the old town of York. So I hope you enjoyed a look at the oldest part of Toronto. Leave a comment down below. Let me hear your thoughts on Toronto's history. Do you think it's been preserved adequately, or do you think it's been pretty much wiped off the map? And be sure to like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already done so. And also make sure you hit that notification bell. That way you won't miss any of my videos. If you'd like to support the channel, there are links in the description where you can do so via PayPal, as well as via my merch store. And there's also a super thanks button right down below if you'd like to support the channel that way. Or you can also become a channel member. And you can find me on Instagram under kcontinuum. So thanks for watching, and be sure to keep checking back. And thanks to the channel members. And of course, I will continue